بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. Khair. Okay, so we spoke about money, right? And we said if you don't have that money for the whole year, you don't pay anything. Okay, so that's savings. We've spoken about savings, and that's put to the side now. The only consideration with savings is if you also do trade. Okay, so if you also do trade, you might combine those two things. So you say, I haven't had the zakat minimum, but on the side, I was buying and selling computer parts. Okay, I just do it as a hobby, right? But I make money out of it, and I buy computer parts to sell them. So you had, you've throughout the whole year, you have had, you've put your stock of computer parts that you buy and sell, plus your savings, it does come to the minimum, in which case the zakat is going to be due. But otherwise, and so that means many people, even if they're wealthy, do not have to pay zakat. Okay, meaning this person, they just spend all their money, or they're paying off their house, right? So they have $600,000 in equity, right? And their second house, they have two houses. One house they rent out, right? So this person has a house he owns, he lives in, another house that he owns and he's renting out. So he has two houses, right? Two houses in California, you're a millionaire, but you're not paying zakat. Why? Well, I live off the rent that comes from my second house. So that's what I do. So yeah, I'm very wealthy in that I own two houses. That's an achievement, alhamdulillah. But you're wealthy, but you don't pay anything. Or every month I'm paying $3,000 on my car payments for my nice car. I have a really, really nice car. So I don't pay zakat on. I don't have savings because I'm always paying for my car or fixing my car up. So I have this like really nice um $100,000 car. But I don't pay zakat because I didn't buy the car to sell it. I bought the car because I like it. Right? So you can be a wealthy person that doesn't pay zakat. Right? It's important to understand. Okay, meaning wealthy in our sense. Okay, so now the next type of wealth that zakat is due on is agriculture. So zakat from agriculture is obligatory on crops, right? Main staple things, which are three conditions. Number one, sown by humans. So this is agriculture, not just things you find out there. They are staple foods, meaning specifically staple foods, or grapes and dates specifically. Okay, so there's a debate among the early Muslims about anything that is not grain, right? So you will find some of the ulama saying no, there's zakat on vegetables and there's zakat on these kind of things as well. Some of them saying absolutely no. So the Shafis, they kind of took this middle ground and they say there is no zakat on any vegetables and fruits apart from dates and grapes specifically. Dates and grapes specifically. So you do pay zakat on your grapes and you pay that as raisins. And you do pay zakat on your date palms and you pay that as cured dates. Okay. But that's something else. Okay. But normally we're talking about wheat, we're talking about rice, we're talking about barley, we're talking about lentils, hummus, other main staple foods, right? And again, just to reiterate our whole point about living life and understanding things, why do we call lentils the meat of the poor person?
Because it's very available and cheap.
Cheap,
Yeah,
available.
it's a good source of protein.
Exactly, right? So you're going to find in many places in the world, hey, they're like lentils, right? Kushari, right? Kushari in Egypt is, what is it? Pasta, right? Like different kind of pasta with rice and lentils. And, so the fact that this exists is indicative of the poverty in Egypt, right? Large population, we need to feed people. People who cannot all eat meat. So we eat lentils, right? We, the super wealthy, we eat meat regularly. It has not been a month since the last time you ate meat. Whereas for normal people in the world, they eat meat once a lifetime, once a year. That's normal human beings, right?
Sheikh, can I
Yes,
just share something? It's not a question, it's just a lit. I met some people from a madrasa in Pakistan, and they told us that, to your point, they only the students of the madrasa ate dal chawal, like rice and lentils, every day, and only ate meat twice a year for Eid.
there we go, right? And so that's the point, right? So we always put in our mind, you have internet, you have electricity, you have flowing water, you have police, you have medical care. You're super unbelievably wealthy, right? Very, very important thing to put in our mind. May Allah forgive us and protect us from doing kufran and ni'mah, not appreciating the blessings in our lives. We're safe, right? We're allowed to stay in your country, right? People who cannot, it's just like very hard. You continually on the move. You're not stable anywhere. Okay, and the minimum amount is 5 wasaqs. Okay, which is not a weight. Okay, it is a volume. Okay, 5 wasaqs is a volume. So therefore, it's going to change the weight. So the weight of the density of rice versus wheat versus dates are not the same, right? So 5 wasaqs is approximately 600 liters, right? A liter of water weighs how much? How much does it weigh? A liter of water, how much does it weigh? A
Oh,
kilogram.
1 kg, right?
Exactly, right? So metric system, whoever put it together is intelligent people in Europe, right? In England, by the way, we're super confused, right? We neither use pounds nor kilo. We use both like in a chaotic way, right? We're just very confused people. But makes a lot of sense, right? So when you say a volume, right? That's a volume, right? That can change based on the density of the thing, but then there's the weight. So when we say a kilo is a liter, we're talking about purified water at sea level, right? That's what we're talking about. Here is purified water, H2O, straight H2O with nothing else in it whatsoever at sea level. Okay, that is the definition of a kilo. That is the definition of a liter, right? And it is 10 centimeters cubed. So that's the definition of a centimeter, which helps us with a meter and a kilometer and everything, right? That's what it all goes down to, right? And then why is it that Celsius? Because at 0 degrees Celsius, that's when things freeze, and at 100 degrees Celsius, that's when water boils. It's all to do with water, right? So that's important because, you know, when we were sleeping in math class or throwing paper airplanes around, we actually made this fiqh mistake, right? And it's not a, it's a mistake. Right? I think it's the same thing in the Reliance Traveler, the same thing, and at least in the translation. It's giving a weight. It's not a weight, it's a volume, right? I think bushels is also a volume, as far as I know. When we say bushels of wheat, I think that's a volume. That's not a weight, right? But here we're talking about a wasaq, which is a volume, right? So a certain number of liters of grain and not an actual pound, etc. Devoid of outer husk and shell. Okay, so we're not talking about you basically as stored. So rice as stored. Okay, and again, forgive me, but it's just important. Modern wheat and modern rice. What are the problems? Anybody?
Most of the nutrition is removed by the time we eat it.
Exactly.
And then there's also the hormones and chemicals and so many things.
Right. And then it's also been so we take off a lot of things, and also being we were selectively bred to be very, very high in starch, right? So when you say they we used to eat bread, right? I eat bread and they eat bread. The haqiqah, what the nature of the bread you're eating is two different things, right? So when you see wheat of the past, it might have, let's say, 30% protein, 30% fiber, 30% starch. Now it's like 95% starch. So it's just sugar, right? rice. Like, oh, we've always eaten rice in India. Yeah, but now you have diabetes. Why? Because that's not the same rice that they used to have. Okay. So, I don't want to go on these tangents, but this is part of deen, right? Part of deen is understanding how the world works, what's going on, what does it mean in terms of my interaction with it. And when there's harm, right? There's harm. One of my teachers, Sheikh Nuh Kala, right? Like he's obsessed with nature, with health stuff. Like super obsessed. Like every lesson he's talking about this stuff. Like for me, it's too much. Like, oh my God, I can't do it. It's too many details. Why does he say that? Not because he cares about health in itself, but he says, my job is to advise people and help them worship Allah. Continually, people have health problems, health problems, health problems, health problems. It affects your ibadah. It affects your mind. It affects your ability to be a strong Muslim, right? The Prophet ﷺ said, استعينوا بالله استعينوا بالله ولا تعجز. Seek help from Allah and don't prove weak. Like, oh, I just had diabetes and I just died of it. It's like, Habibi, find out your diet, find out your heritage, find out how to eat properly, and fight yourself. It's very hard. It's extremely hard to do a diet, but we need to do this, right? Eat real food, right? At one point he made as well is he said in the past, if you go back 100 years in America or 150 years, people would spend approximately 1/3 of their income on food, right? So that's a lot. People today were like, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to spend 1/3 of my income on food. Maybe the reason we're so sick is because we don't spend 1/3 of our income on food. Meaning, it's not that food is expensive, it's that we're eating trash regularly, right? And so this is part of the deen, being aware of politics, being aware of economics, being aware of history, being aware of this is all part of deen, right? And being aware of health, right? Is this going to harm me? Is it not going to harm me? The nature of food, these kind of things is part of our deen, right? It's not a small thing. Okay. So now it says zakat is also obligatory on two types of fruit, specifically dates and grapes, and no other vegetables, right? For the same thing, zakat is obligatory on these fruits when the conditions are met. Again, there's a Muslim, the person who owns the field is Muslim. They are free. They have complete ownership, and they possess the minimum amount for the whole year. No. So if with crops and dates and grapes, what happens is whenever you harvest, you look at the harvest. Okay, so harvest time, some crops twice a year, sometimes once a year. So what you're going to do is you are going to look at the volume of the produce that the harvest, and you're going to give 1/10 or 1/20th, right? 1/10 if I live in a place where there's rains all the time. I work in the paddy fields. I don't have to do any irrigation. It just rains, alhamdulillah, just how it is. And so I obviously have to plant I have to do the work to plant the rice. It's hard, but alhamdulillah, I don't have to do irrigation, right? As opposed to many places in the world, right? You're gonna do mass irrigation every single year. You're gonna be paying for even airplanes, right? To like put water on things and all kind of stuff like that. A lot of hard work to get the water there, in which case it's only going to be 5%. I said 20%. 1/20th, meaning 5%. So if you pay for irrigation, it's 5% of the crops. If you do not pay for irrigation and it's not a recurrent thing, it was just the beginning, for example. In the beginning you had to do the ditches or whatever, but it's all there now, then it's going to be 10%. Okay. So that's much more though, right? If you think about it, it's much more than savings. Khair. Okay, that's clear, inshallah. And then we have trade goods, i.e., something bought with the intention of selling, as opposed to you bought it and then you decided to sell it. Okay, so let's think about the normal way that people deal with property, right? So you're thinking, I live in California, this is insane. I am paying rent. This is crazy. I cannot do this for 30 years of my life. No way. So you say, I'm going to buy a house because it'd be much better. And anyway, if something happens, I could always sell it. So in the back of your mind, selling is an option. Equity is an option, right? But that's not what you bought it for. As opposed to I'm house flipping. I bought a house, flip it, sell it, right? Buy a car to sell, right? I bought a car. Okay, well, are you going to have this car forever? No, one day I'll sell it and buy a new car. Oh, but was that your intention? Or did you just buy the car to drive? So I bought the car to drive, right? So you buy a car with the secondary intention that you may sell it at some time. That's not called a trade good. Trade good is I bought it with the intention of selling. So even if afterwards you say, you know what, someone's like, man, you got to sell your car. Why? Oh, Prius is really good right now. That's Prius V, fantastic. Sell that car right now. It's a great car. People will buy it, right? It's just gone up. So now when you change your mind, still no zakat is due. So it is that you bought it with the intention of selling it, right? Now this turns into cash, right? So you bought the house for 500,000, and I'm going to wait for it to go to 6, 700,000, and I'm going to sell it. Okay, so now year one, you have $600,000 there. But I don't have that in cash, that's true, but you have it in potential. And then the next year, it's actually worth more. It's now 650, 700, and I'm just waiting it to get to 8. Okay, so every year, you're going to pay zakat on that money. You're going to pay zakat on the value of the house that you are keeping for sale, the value of your goods in your shop, right? You bought all of these books to sell, okay? Then you're going to pay zakat on that, okay? And just like money, it has to be a minimum of about $500, $600, right? So it says zakat is obligatory on trade goods according to the conditions mentioned for money. Same discussions. And we will put them together. So again, as we mentioned before, you're a teenager. While you're in college, you used to buy and sell computer parts. Okay, you look at your savings. You had $300 in your bank account or in your other bank account that you don't use, and that was there the whole year. Okay, and it did not go below that. Plus, you had at least $400 of stock. Okay, so now you had $700 for the whole year. You're going to pay zakat now. Okay, does that make sense? Now it gets
Yes.
a little bit more complex when when you buy material to sell. So for example, you are a company and you bring in material to then change and sell. So you don't sell wood. Like you don't buy and sell wood. You buy wood, change it into desks and sell it. That's a bit more complex. We're not going to talk about that now. Okay. And similarly, you have an investment in you have an investment in a company. So you have a 0.5% 0.5% what's it called? 0.5% um, uh, investment in Fareed's bookshop. So you say, how many books do you have, Fareed? Oh, I have a lot of books, mashallah. My stock is huge, right? It's huge. Like thousands of books in my bookshop. So what we say now is, Fareed, you as a company pay zakat on that thing as one, and Sham takes on 0.5% of that. Okay? So that means the company has to pay zakat on its trade goods that it has right? So now if you have an investment in a service company, they don't have things that they like in a internet company, right? They don't necessarily buy and sell things. Maybe they do, but if it's a service, then there's no zakat like that, right? Like you have a share in a company that just provides services, right? Then they don't have assets, right? Or they have assets, but they're not selling them, right? So the company that you have a share in just bought a new building. So they just bought this like $10 million thing, right? So do you have to pay zakat on it? No, because you don't pay zakat on a building that you own because it wasn't bought to sell. But for example, you were investing, you and your friends, for example, invested together in buying and selling houses, in which case you have to look at the stock of the company and you're going to carry, then you're going to pay the stock of that and you're going to pay you have to fork up the percentage that you have of that. Okay? Does that make sense? And if, for example, the company's they're not Muslim, they're not going to pay zakat, you have to still pay your part of that. So if you have investments in something, let's say in Winco, right? Then you say, what was the stock that Winco had this year? They had this much. Okay, so zakat is due on it based on your percentage share of that company. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Question then, is trade good or bad?
It's neither.
It could be neither, yeah. I mean, it's not an act of worship in and of itself, but
I mean, it's good if it follows the Sunnah and
yeah.
Islamic principles.
It shouldn't you just like do worship instead? Like does Allah want us to
And
work?
poverty also can lead to kufr.
Let's say it again, Asad.
Yes.
So Allah does want us to work.
Poverty also can lead to kufr.
Exactly. Right? It can be very bad. So the ulama they discuss what is the most noble trade. Is it farming? Is it being a tradesman? Is it something else, right? And so these are good things, right? There is nothing wrong with, um, with doing trade, right? There is a, there's this Maliki family in Saudi Arabia, I think in Khobar or something like that. Not sure in Khobar or maybe somewhere, not somewhere else. They have land and they have farms, okay? So this is like this large extended Maliki family. So they have money. So what do? They have property, and then they have a school, and they just have shuyukh there. They're scholars and their family members. They're all teaching. They've been teaching the whole time, and it's all free and everything. Great. What a great system, right? So money is the power to do good things. So there's nothing wrong with not with making tons of money, right? There's nothing wrong with making tons of money. It's a great idea. Number two, trade is a good thing, right? It's a good thing to do. So there's nothing wrong with doing these kind of things, right? You're like, yeah, I'm gonna get into trade. I want to do this. I want to flip houses. I want to, buy a house, rent it out, whatever. All these things are good and noble things to do, right? They're not low or anything. Jazakum khair, am I right? Spoils of war, yeah, agriculture, etc. Jazakum khair. Our service base, yeah, but so here's the questions, right? So Jazakum khair, Aman, right? This is from Bushra Karim, right? Um, so our service-based desks are not so noble. Unless what? Right? So Aman, what do you do in life? What's your job? Besides being a professional model. Okay, you're a tutor, okay? What do you tutor? Stats, okay? Stats is totally unimportant, right? Like we could function totally fine without stats. It's like as important as Madonna studies. I think there's still a degree. I think you can have a degree in modern study and Madonna studies, by the way. BA in Madonna studies. Pretty sure it still exists. So this is a Wikipedia page, the study and work and life of American singer, songwriter Madonna, right? There isn't a BA anymore, but I think there was. So is that true? Like studying and teaching stats is as important or as useless as studying about Madonna. Is it true?
No.
Absolutely not.
Not absolutely not, right? So in your world, right, Sham, you're not into math, but you need math, right? Stats and all these things, super important. So
Yes.
that
Yes.
is a communal obligatory knowledge. We cannot function without it. Okay? We cannot function without stats. Okay? So when we teach stats, we say, Ya Allah, I'm making an income. I'm intending people use this for khair, and I'm fulfilling a communal obligation without which the whole mankind would be sinful. Right? So it's fard. And so in reality, most jobs in the world, right? Most jobs in the world are fulfilling communal obligations, right? They are, right? So when I say there's a bit of a hyperbole, what if there's an excess of you, like we don't need another stats teacher, there's too many of you, or B, it isn't actually useful, like a coffee shop. Do we actually have to have coffee shops? Is that really a communal obligation?
Not really.
Not really. Um, you know, right? But so there are things like that that's not really important, right? Do we need to have entertainment? And then there's a lot of things we don't need, right? Like the world would function, you'd be okay without it, right? Or in fact, you'd be much better without it sometimes, right? Many things. But otherwise, most of what we do in life, you can have an intention that I'm fulfilling a communal obligation, right? I'm fulfilling a communal obligation. This is really important, right? And so, okay. Okay, zakat on camels. So it says the minimum number of camels is 5, right? A camel, Badr, how much can you ask ChatGPT, how much does a camel cost in California?
It says around $10,000, while pregnant females can cost up to $17,000.
Allahu Akbar, right? So the pregnant camel, right? Where is that in which surah? وَإِذَا الْعِشَارُ أُطِّلَتْ. That's the pregnant camel, right? So last month it says on the day when people wouldn't care about $17,000. Like if you saw it, you're like, who cares? Hey bro, that's a walking animal that's $17,000. You don't want it? No. Why? It's Judgment Day, Habibi. Right? So you said $5,000 or $10,000
At $10,000.
for a camel.
Yeah.
Okay?
For a mature male camel,
Okay.
gelding.
Okay. So let's make it a little bit less. Let's call it 7, okay? Okay. So a slightly cheaper one. You have $35,000 in savings, i.e. in camels. So 5 times 7. 30 to $50,000. On that you pay one share. How much is a share? Is a sheep. A sheep is in California is worth what? Like $200, $300, right? So that's what's asked to do. You are not asked to give $10,000 away. You have $50,000 and you give away a whole camel. That's ridiculous, right? That would be ridiculously difficult, right? When you have 10 camels, then 2 share. You give 2 sheep, a year-old sheep or 2-year-old female goat, right? A 1-year-old female sheep or a 2-year-old female goat, right? What do we call a we're gonna inshallah I'm gonna start zoology 101 soon. What do we call a female sheep?
An ewe, EWE.
Okay, and what do we call a female goat? 5 seconds to answer.
I mean, billy goat.
Billy goat is a male. It's called a nanny.
Yeah.
It's called a nanny. Okay, so a 1-year-old ewe or a 2-year-old nanny. Okay, and a female donkey is called a jenny. But we don't pay account on those. Okay, so a 1-year-old ewe or a 2-year-old nanny goat. Okay, there we go. So on a 10-year-old, okay, on 15, 3, on 24, on 25, now we go into now we start going into so now you have 25 camels. So we're talking you have $100,000, $200,000 of camels. Okay, now you're going to give 1 camel away. Okay, 1 camel away. And you're going to give bint makhad, right? So bint makhad, the daughter of the she camel that is now pregnant. So the mother has given birth, okay, and she is now pregnant, okay. And now the 36 bint laboon, the she camel of the she camel, the bint means daughter of the she camel who is now giving milk to the other baby, right? So it's got a little brother, little sister, right? And then the hiqqa, okay, which is from the word haq, which means thabata, so she's strong now, she can carry things, or she can be mated with. And then jad'a, right, which is what? Which is that the teeth, that some of the teeth now start to come out, which I believe is 4 years now. Okay, So these are very specific numbers, aren't they? So here, 5, 10, 15, 20, right? 25, that's a 5 times table, right? I remember that. But 36, that's an odd number. 46 is an odd number. 61, 76, 79, 121. Is there any the Fibonacci sequence there or something going on there? Like what's the nth term here? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 36, 46, 61. So from here to here is 10, from here to here is 15, from here to here is 15, from here to here is 15, and from here to here is 30. Right? Does it seem logical to you?
No.
No. So we have a
Probably, is it because it's +1, so we are giving a camel away?
Okay.
I mean, 35 plus 1, 45 plus 1, 60 plus 1. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Okay. So we have a problem. Okay. So we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not do things randomly. And we know that, so therefore, there's a reason for every single thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does. So when He tells us to do something, there's a reason for it. We know that Allah doesn't need anything. So therefore, when He tells us to do something, it is for our benefit. Okay. We give zakat for our own benefit. Okay. And we know as well that the default is that we can identify what that reason is, and we can extrapolate and change based on that reason, right? So it's a bit like this. Okay, I know that Dr. Sham is a sane individual. Okay, he looks at me, thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs to the right, and walks off. I know he did it for a reason, not insane. I know by default it means something, and by default I can infer what it means and I can act upon it. And it's going to mean do X or do Y, right? So he's communicating with me, right? I don't quite understand what it is, but I know if I've got to think about it, right? So that's the same thing with the Sharia. The Sharia, Allah is communicating with us and telling us things, okay? The problem is it's not always easy to find out. And the problem is there's other things like this, where, I mean, I'm sure there's a reason. This comes in a hadith. This is what you have to do, but I have no idea, right? So I can see a system, the more wealth you have, the more you give. Okay, that's pretty easy, but it's not consistent. Right? It's not consistent. So here, yes, we say the default is you can work out Y and you can work out this, but here that's not the default. The default isn't happening. Right? And this is an example that somebody like a Dawood al-Zahiri would come along and say, Habibi, you don't know why Allah wants you to do things. Just listen and obey and don't extrapolate. Don't do analogy. Because look, this isn't analogous, is it? Right? 5 daily prayers, well, not 6. Why not 4? 24 hours divided by 6. 24 hours divided by 4. Right? Why 5? Right? Why not 2, night and day? Right? So someone like Dawood al-Zahir would come along and quote a hadith like this. Right? This is based on a hadith. Prophet said it, we do it. Khalas. Or quote other things and say, guys, the default, you don't know what Allah wants you to do. You can't infer things, right? You can't do that. You just have to listen and obey. There's no room for your mind at all, right? There's no room for your mind at all, and you can't infer anything, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for some wisdom, fine, has told you, for example, I don't know, you know, um, if a dog licks from your bowl, wash it 7 times, 1 time with earth, right? That doesn't mean necessarily that if you put your hand in the dog's mouth, you have to wash your hand, does it? Because the bowl is different to your hand. And it doesn't necessarily mean that a pig is filthy either. So your whole game of doing analogy is just silly and don't do it, right? There's no analogy between gold and silver and modern currency, right? There's no zakat. There's no analogy between, I don't know. So analogy has no role, okay? So it's things like this that a scholar like that would come along and say, I don't believe in analogy, period. Just whatever the Prophet ﷺ says, just leave it like that. And if he didn't say about it, it's halal, right? And which religion is like that? There's one religion, Abrahamic faith is like that. Very literalist.
Judaism.
Thank you very much, right? So, an Orthodox Jew, a woman, you got to cover your hair. Okay, why? God knows why. So that's why you're going to see, for example, some Orthodox Jews, women doing what? What will they do to their hair?
They wear wigs.
Wear a wig, right? And so you're like, give me a break. And so they're going to come to you and say, no, give me a break. Like, do you think you're God? Right? And so there's some logic to it, right? And it's very important to understand, that so Spain was a place of a lot of thinking, etc. There was a Zahiri movement in Spain, okay? So like with Ibn Hazm, so Dawood al-Zahiri is originally from Isfahan in Iran. So there was a movement in Iran, literalism, and it's not literalism, not the translation, it's non-analogy. That's what they say. They don't do analogy, right? There was a movement in Spain, and because of the Renaissance in Spain, the Muslim Renaissance in Spain, or the nascence, not renaissance, but the cultural and academic, what's the word? Uh, flourishing in Spain. What flourished with them? Jewish. There was a Jewish Renaissance in Spain, right? That's where we get Maimonides. He's in Spain, etc. And so they follow on with this thing, right? Usul al-fiqh, the Jewish usul al-fiqh comes from Islamic usul al-fiqh in Spain. That's where it comes from, right? Etc. Right? So anyway, there's an argument. That's true. But how do we answer that? We said default. The default is we can understand what Allah is telling us to do, and we can use that to inform how we apply it and how we don't apply it, and we can do analogy. Sometimes we can't. Okay. I don't know why. I don't know what the system is. I can't do the nth term. I don't know what the system is, and just leave it like that. There obviously is a reason why these numbers are there. I can't identify it. Khalas. The Kaaba, there is a reason why Allah has asked me to go around the Kaaba 7 times. Right? I don't know why, so therefore I can't do analogy to some other place or some other activity, right? But the default is that I can find out why, and that can inform me how to apply this and how to apply it to new scenarios. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So are there any madhahib that have something else to say besides the Zahiri madhab
So
about this?
you will find things like, let's say, for example, the issue with the dog, okay? So Imam Malik was asked, he said, do you consider a dog to be filthy? He said, no. Do you consider its saliva to be filthy? He said, no. So they said, Imam Malik, Habibi, if a dog licks from a bowl, do you have to wash it 7 times? He says, yeah. So how do you explain it? What's your system, right? So the Shafis, we have a system, right? We say it's like this. It's like the dog is filthy. You can't buy it. We have a system. We try to basically think for Allah and write out a script, right? Or kind of put it into a code, right? By expanding. So we expanded it to, we said the dog licking the bowl to licking anything else. The saliva is filthy. The mouth is filthy. The whole animal is filthy. Therefore, also the pig is filthy. We have a whole system like that, right? The Hanafis have said it's the saliva. It's this, it's that. I'm sure there's other ways looking at it as well. Imam Malik, he was asked like, just leave it like that. So you will find some things here and there that are what they call ta'abbudi. They say ta'abbudi, meaning we just do that. What it kind of means is they're not really being literal. They're not really doing what Dawood al-Zahiri. They're just saying, on this issue, I'm stuck. If that makes sense, right? So there might be other reasons why Imam Malik said that, right? You just leave it like that. Like the Prophet said, if the dog licks from the bowl, that's it. But he doesn't consider the dog to be filthy, nor does he consider his saliva to be filthy, which kind of quote unquote doesn't make sense, right? Because presumably if the dog licks from the bowl, then it's either the dog or the saliva must be filthy, right? You have to kind of go one way or the other. So you find things like that. The Hanbalis, for example, like we say, right, when the Prophet said, when you wake up from sleep, don't put your hand in the bucket of water until you wash it 3 times, because you don't know where your hand has spent the night. So we take that sentence, you don't know where your hand has spent the night, and we say, this is the point of the hadith. Like, I don't know if my hands are clean or not. So we say the offensiveness of putting your hand in a bucket of water is when you're not sure if your hand is clean or not. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, because you don't know where your hand spent the night. What if I do know where my hand spent the night? Right? So the Hanbalis, they say, no, 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 this is a ritual. Like when you wake up, before you put your hand in a bucket of water, you have to say, you have to wash your hands 3 times specifically. And it's irrelevant, it's irrespective of, even if you knew that they were pure. And what's it called? And you also have to say Bismillah because it's like wudu, right? So they treat it as a ritual. And if you think about it, we do that in many things, right? We do that in many things. Let's talk about marriage, right? We've spoken about this before, right? Looking at the illah in marriage. So so and so got married, okay? He got married, and so why do you have to? Why is it haram to have relations if you're not married? Because it's haram. Yeah, but why? Oh, because haram. Okay, but why? So we would come along and say, oh, because you can't establish lineage. So I can establish lineage, DNA. Because you can't enforce financial support. I can do that. So somebody comes along and says, I honestly don't see what's wrong with zina. Right? If that's the reason why you have a contract, the basic reason you have a contract is to establish lineage and to enforce financial support, then why? So we come along and say, actually, it's only nebulously connected to those goals. Meaning we can see it from a distance that is kind of related to those things, but not specifically. Like it's not 100%, right? So because it's only nebulously connected and not directly connected, we cannot say, well, if you could establish lineage and if you could guarantee that you could enforce financial support, then zina will become halal. Does that make sense? So there's a difference between a nebulous reason and a very specific reason, right? Nebulous reason, you have wealth and you need to share it with other people. Specific reason, you have 5 camels. Does that make sense? So we will do things like that. Like across the board, you will find certain people at certain times just leave it like that. They'll just say, why? I don't know, and just leave it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But the key thing with Dawood al-Zahiri and the Zahiris is there's no such thing as analogy, right? So 2 examples, right? The Prophet ﷺ said, don't urinate in still water and then bathe in it. So the normal person would say, well, because urinating in it would make it filthy, right? So therefore, if you vomited in it or if you defecated in it, it would be the same. The Zahiris don't say that. They say you can't do analogy between urinating and defecating because they're not the same thing. We're like, come on, bro. It's the same thing, right? Like the point is that the water's filthy. But they don't look like that. They say, no, that's what the Prophet said, just leave it. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, a woman who's been already married, you have to ask her permission to marry her off. But a virgin, she's never been married, right? Her permission is taken, and her permission is her silence. Okay, so the Hanafi school, they say it means that she doesn't have to verbally say okay as long as it's understood that she's okay with it, right? The Shafis, we say her consent doesn't matter, right? If she agreed or disagreed, it's irrelevant. Okay, so we say her silence is her permission. Shafis, meaning it doesn't matter what she thinks. Her silence is her permission, meaning it's okay as long as we can understand that she's not against it, right? But if taken literally, her silence is her permission. What if she agrees verbally?
Then it means that it doesn't count.
Yeah. So Badr goes home, talks to his daughter, sweetheart, I found you the best husband in the world. She's like, oh, is it so and so? Yeah. Oh my God. Sorry, Dad, don't say it like I've had a crush on him for the last 5 years and da da da. He's such a nice guy. Da 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 da. Oh, I'm sorry. She's like, what? The Prophet ﷺ said, your permission is your silence. You want silence, so you can't marry him now. right? So the normal human being would say her silence is her permission, and by a fortiori, a better right, her permission is obviously her permission, right? A literalist wouldn't say that. Literalists would say the Prophet said her silence is her permission. That's it. So it gets a bit silly, you know? It gets a bit silly. Eating what's it called? Pig fat. So according to the Zahiris, you can eat pig fat because the verse of the Quran says lahm al-khinzir, the meat of pigs. So you can eat pork rind and you can eat pig fat, right? You're like, come on, bro. Like, what's the difference between, what's the difference between pig meat and pig fat? Like, it's the same thing, right? Like, no, it's not the same. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا حَرَّمَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةَ وَالدَّمَ وَلَحْمَ الْخِنْزِيرِ. Allah has only, specifically only, forbidden for you blood, uh, carrion, and the meat of pork, of pig, not its fat, not its skin, right? Presumably you can eat its feces. Presumably. I don't know.
Sheikh, are you saying that there's a group of Muslims that actually follow this?
No, they don't really exist, but it was a way of thinking, it's a mentality. They kind of died out, but it's a way of thinking that they say we are not going to do analogy, but it takes you to ridiculous ends. That's the point, right? A pig is swimming in water, right? So can you have aquatic animals?
So would this be an example of hypothetical fiqh?
No, not hypothetical, it's real. So they're going to be like, yeah, if you see a pig swimming in water, it's fine. And they're like, wow, So you get to the point where you question, are they even sane? You know? But they see it as ridiculously submissive to Allah. Like this is total, like I'm not here thinking, oh Allah, my brain is in sujood to you. Whatever you say, I do without thinking, right? And they have a case, they come along and use this as an argument, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean you will find some really funny things. Right? You'll find some funny things in history. But again, repeat, we as normal four madhab scholars, we say, the scholars of fiqh, they say, no, there's such thing as analogy. The Sahaba did analogy. The Prophet ﷺ frequently said, have you considered, what about this? He gave reasons, right? Ya Rasulullah, my mother made this vow to do this, but she died not doing it. The Prophet ﷺ said, well, think about it. If she had a debt that she didn't pay it, would you pay it off? Yes. Okay. There we go. Like he did analogy. He actually helped people do analogy, regular basis. So, the Zahiri madhab is extremely weak, if not totally insane and invalid, right? But, it's a way of thinking that I'm just bringing that up here because this demonstrates it. Go ahead, Badr.
Um. So I'm probably just really ignorant on this, but I've I know a lot of scholars do quote like Ibn Hazm and Al-Wahiri scholars, and they'll take an opinion that they've had. Um, but like, is it acceptable to take like an opinion that is from the Wahiri madhab if it's like this, where they don't use qiyas, but then like you're a Shafi'i, it's just that you believe that this opinion is stronger, you know?
So there's different opinions. Generally speaking, you would find people saying, we don't care what they say, they're just insane, right? Generally. The stronger position is, the strongest position is that the Zahiris, they were ulama, okay, they were scholars, etc. And they have some certain positions here and there like super insane. But they have certain opinions that their concept of analogy has nothing to do with. Okay, so we say on an issue that is nothing to do with them ignoring analogy, we will recognize their fatwa as a valid fatwa in principle, right? Now, if you come and ask me, right, based on my training with my teachers, I would not do that. I would never give a fatwa outside of the form that I have ever. I wouldn't do it. That's for many reasons, right? But in principle, like, is it considered does every single thing that the Zahiri say is invalid? You say, well, no, because not every single thing they say is based on the ignoring of analogy. Sometimes it's for other reasons, right? So there we go. So, for example, Ibn Hazm saying that musical instruments are totally fine. Why does he say that? He says because the hadith in Bukhari that says it's haram is weak. That's his argument. There we go. So it's nothing to do with analogy. He's just saying the hadith is weak. It's not sahih. So that's his argument, right? So you come along and say, I'm going to follow Ibn Hazm, musical instruments are halal. Okay, that has nothing to do with analogy. Does that make sense? Now, do
Yeah.
I advise that? No, would not advise that at all, right? And there's multiple reasons for that. But can I come along and say every single thing that Ibn Hazm and Dawood al-Zahiri and any other Zahiri said is 100% wrong and it is kufr? You can't say that. Because not every single ijtihad that they had was completely crazy. It's not true. Right? But the question is, do you want to follow somebody? Like, would you ask me a fatwa? Like, if you heard me saying that pork fat was halal, would you listen to anything I said? I don't think so. I think you'd be like, Freed, you're weird, right? You wouldn't trust me. So here's the cherry picking ethics of the 21st century, right? Is like you just chose knowing that you wouldn't trust me on anything else. You chose my fatwa because it was easy, right? Riba is halal because not gold and silver, right? Zakat is not obligatory because not gold and silver, right? Music is halal because you said it. And then, oh yeah, by the way, the same person who's saying the same thing also says that, I don't know, says that you can eat pork fat. And you're like, if you don't trust me here, why do you trust me there? Right? It kind of sounds a bit like you're not really consistent in your morals. Wallahu alam. Right? Does that make sense? So
Yes.
the way I have been trained, the way that you normally see people for the last 1,000 years is here are the former dhahib. These are codified, clarified. Everybody trusts them. Stick with them, those things, and you're fine. You want to step out the former dhahib, you're stepping down. You're Alison. You're going down the rabbit hole, and you're going into the unknown, the very very weird world where you don't really know what you're doing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okie dokie. So from there on every 40, there is a bint labun, and every 50, there is a hiqqa. So basically, when you get to 130, right? So 130 is 50 plus 40 plus 40. So, right? So when you get to 130, that's 40 plus 40 plus 50, right? So you're going to give 2 times bint labun, 1 times hiqqa. You get to 140, that is 50 plus 50 plus 40 plus 40. So you're going to give 2 hiqqas and 2 bint labun. You get to 150, that's 3 hiqqas. 160. That's 50 plus, that's, what is it? 160 is 4 times 40, right? Is there anything else? So 160 is 4 times 40. So you're going to give 4 of those. Or you could do 160. You can't do it in any other combination, can you? I don't think so. Okay, 170 is 3 40s plus a 50. 180, 2 50s and 2 40s. 190, 3 50s plus a 40, etc. And you're going to go up and up and up and up. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you go multiples, you basically put things multiples of 40s and 50s. Now, when you get to 200, what's the issue here in 200? Is that divisible by 40?
Yes.
So that's 5, right?
And then 4
Well, obviously not
hiqqas.
throwing paper airplanes around in math class. Right? So it's 5 bint labuns or 4 hiqqas. In which case you say, Habibi, do you have both? So yeah, I have both. Alhamdulillah, I have 200 camels and I have both. So now we're going to ask the question, given that you have both, you have to look at the current market value on the bint laboon and the hiqqa and find out which is the most. Because you are now going to make a decision based on the poor without them being able to choose, right? The poor cannot all come up to you and say, hi, it doesn't work like that, right? So you're now gonna, if you have both of them, you're gonna have to give which is in the best interest of the other person, right? And then 210, which is gonna be what? Four 40s plus a 50, etc. And you're just gonna keep building up like that. Okay, and then we have cows. So it says the minimum number of cows is 30, on which there is a tabi' even if it's male. Okay, so this is a year-old male. Okay, and then there's 40, in which case there is a musinna. Okay, which is a 2-year-old female. So here this is a male though. So golden rule: you can whenever you have to give a male, you can give a female instead because it's worth more. But whenever you have to give a female, you cannot give a male in its place because it's worth less, right? Not worthless, but worth less, right? So if you have 30, a male yearling, 40, a 2-year-old female, 50, a 2-year-old female, 60, 2 males, 1-year-old males, 70, 1, 1, 80, 2 2-year-old females, 90, 3 1-year-old males, 100 is 30 plus 30 plus 40, etc. Make sense? So
Yes.
so what you pay on from 41 up to 60 up to 50 so from 40 up to 59 is the same. There's a whole gap there, right? And then it says, well, the sheep, the same thing. The minimum zakat on sheep and goats is 40, even if you don't have 40 sheep. You might have 20 sheep and 20 goats, but they're considered one category. Okay, often you have goats with sheep. Okay, on which the zakat is 1 share, so it's 1/40th. That makes sense, right? 1/40th of your wealth, 1/40th, right? And you give a jada'a, which is a 1-year-old sheep or a 2-year-old goat. On 121, so the minimum is 40, then you jump all the way to 121. With 121, you give 2 share, right? 1-year-old sheep, 2-year-old goat, females, right? 1-year-old ewe or 2-year-old nanny, right? 201, you give 3, 400, you give 4, 500, you give 5, 606, etc. in hundreds, okay? And we'll come to the conditions of mixed flocks, inshallah, next week. But the conditions of all of these things is you've owned them for the whole year, unless your animals give birth to them. So you had 180, and then 31 sheep were born that year. You're going to treat it as 121 for the whole year. And on the condition that you're not paying for food, right? It's just free pasture, right? And they're not work animals, right? So you have cows that are working for carrying loads, or camels that are carrying things across Central Asia or carrying water. You don't pay zakat on animals like that. Okay, so it is there's open field there. You're not paying for the land. You're not paying for the food. You're not paying for the land. Go ahead, Azhar.
Okay, if a person has 38 camels, 36 camels, instead of a bint lebanon, can he give a hikka? I mean,
Yes, you can go up. Yeah.
because
And what can now happen? We'll do this in Reliance, inshallah. Is that you can go up a stage. You say, for example, I don't have it. So what you can do with camels is you can go up a stage and you get cash back, right, from the state. Like the zakat collector will give you. So you can either go down and pay cash, or go up and receive money. Does that make sense?
That's right.
No. Okay. Why would it be clever to have sheep and goats today, based on last week's lesson? To have land and to have sheep and goats? based on last week's lesson about the nature of money? Why would it be a wise thing to do to have land and to have livestock?
Um, I wasn't here last week, but
Okay, so why do you think you as a breadwinner, as a provider, going into World War III or World War IV, who knows what's going to happen, right?
And doesn't have to rely on job or an income.
Exactly,
Free
right?
food.
It is actual money. It is actual wealth, right? So you have a piece of land where someone's not going to bother you, and you have sheep and you have goats. You live off the milk, right? Uh, get your own wheat, get your own thing. Fantastic, right? This is a whole movement, right? It's a whole movement in the world, right? And Islamically, it's much better than dealing with many other things, right? In Jordanian Arabic, they call it halal, right? Somebody bira'i halal, right? That means sheep. They call it halal, right? That's even before modern period, right? Because they just see it as like it's 100% halal. Here are your sheep. You take your sheep out, they eat grass, they make milk, you sell the milk, you slaughter the sheep. What's wrong with that? As opposed to everything else is always mixed with some very fishy business, right? So it's a good idea, right? Get a piece of land, alhamdulillah, somebody comes and steals it from you, inshallah you die as a shaheed, right? Man qutila duna malihi fahuwa shaheed. Whoever dies defending his property, alhamdulillah, you're shaheed, right? Inshallah. So go to the Midwest, that's where we're going. Head to the Midwest. Head to Mexico. Head to Panama, Badr, right? Inshallah, we'll stop here. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.